In the beginning, when the call of God echoed through the barren lands of ancient Canaan, a man named Abraham heard his voice. Not a whisper in the night, but a divine command that shook the very ground of his heart. Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. It was not just a relocation, it was a complete uprooting, a test of trust from the very start. Abraham obeyed. He left everything familiar, stepping into the unknown, not because the destination was clear, but because the voice that called him was. This was the foundation of a faith that would be tested again and again. But perhaps no test was more piercing, more heart-wrenching than the moment God asked him to sacrifice his beloved son, Isaac, the son of promise. The child Abraham and Sarah had waited for through years of barrenness, disbelief, and divine reassurance. Isaac represented more than a son. He embodied the fulfillment of God's covenant, the proof of divine faithfulness. And then, one day, God spoke again, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Pause for a moment. Consider the weight of those words. This was not a request, it was a command, and yet it was a test. Not a test of morality or theology, but of trust. Could Abraham trust God even when the command seemed to contradict the very promise? The next morning, Abraham rose early. No delay, no protest. He saddled his donkey, took 2 servants and Isaac, and began the 3-day journey to the mountain. The Bible doesn't record his inner turmoil, but we can imagine the storm raging in his soul. Every step was a silent scream. Every mile was a question unanswered. On the 3rd day, he saw the mountain in the distance. He told the servants, "Stay here. We will worship and we will come back to you." Did he believe that? Or was it hope clothed in obedience? Isaac carried the wood. Abraham carried the fire and the knife. Together they climbed. Then came the question no father would want to hear. "Father, the fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham replied, "God himself will provide the lamb, my son." Was this faith? Was it prophetic insight? Or was it a trembling hope that somehow, at the last moment, God would intervene? They reached the top. Abraham built an altar, laid the wood, bound Isaac, laid him on the altar. The knife rose in the air, time froze, and then God spoke again. "Abraham, Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught in a thicket. God had provided, not before the journey, not halfway up the mountain, but at the altar, at the moment of surrender. Now pause and let that settle in. The provision came not when Abraham planned it, but when he proved his trust. God never wanted Isaac's life, he wanted Abraham's heart, and he received it fully that day. This story is not just about a man and his son, it's about every person who's ever stood at the edge of obedience and asked, "Can I really trust you, God?" It's about the moments when what God asks doesn't make sense, when the path forward seems wrapped in pain, and when faith feels like sacrifice. Right in the middle of this powerful narrative, let me take a moment to invite you to support this podcast if it's been speaking to you. Your engagement matters. If this message has encouraged or challenged your heart, take a moment to like, comment, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. It helps us reach more hearts with God's truth. Let's continue. Abraham named that place, "The Lord will provide." And that name echoed through generations. It wasn't just a monument to provision, it was a declaration of God's nature. Provision is who he is. But sometimes he waits until the altar, until the knife is raised, until trust is complete. Why would God test Abraham like this? Not to learn something about Abraham, God already knew, but so Abraham could learn something about himself. Faith isn't forged in comfort. It's refined in surrender. When we are called to release what we love most, that is where real trust begins. Maybe for you, it's not a son. Maybe it's your plans, your timeline, your dreams. Maybe God is asking you to lay something down, not to take it away, but to show you He is enough. Faith doesn't mean we understand everything. Faith means we trust even when we don't. And Abraham's journey shows us that the hardest tests often come right before the greatest revelations. Think about this. Abraham didn't have the full Bible. He didn't have a list of promises written on parchment. He had a voice, a relationship, a history with God. And sometimes that's all we have. But it's enough. There's something sacred about walking with God into uncertainty. It's not blind faith. It's informed trust. Abraham had seen God come through before, and though this command shook him to his core, he moved forward, because trust is not built on comfort, it's built on consistency. When God asks you to give up something precious, it's not because He wants to leave you empty, it's because He wants to fill you with something eternal. Sometimes we clutch our plans so tightly that we can't receive His promise. Abraham had to open his hands. And what about Isaac? He wasn't a toddler. He was old enough to carry wood, to ask intelligent questions, to understand what was happening. He let himself be bound. He laid down. His trust in his father mirrors Abraham's trust in God. A lineage of faith doesn't just come from what we teach, it comes from what we live. That mountain moment became a foundation for generations. Centuries later, another son would walk up a hill carrying wood on his back, but this time there would be no ram, no substitute, because he was the substitute. Jesus, the Lamb of God, took our place not just in symbolism but in sacrifice. The story of Abraham and Isaac foreshadows the ultimate expression of love. Not man giving his son for God, but God giving his son for man. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with a choice: to trust, to surrender, to walk up our own mountains when God calls, and to believe that on the other side of obedience is always a revelation of His goodness. You may be standing at the foot of your own Moriah. The journey feels long, the sacrifice feels too great, the silence of God feels unbearable. But listen, God is not absent in the test. He is present in every step, and the same voice that called you is the voice that will provide. Trust isn't proven by words, it's proven by steps, by laying down the knife, by building the altar, by believing in the midst of what you don't yet see. The test of Abraham was never just about obedience, it was about intimacy, it was about a relationship so deep that even when the command hurt, the trust held firm. And that, dear listener, is what God desires with each of us. Not just faith in His power, but trust in His heart, because the God who tests is also the God who provides. The God who calls you to the mountain is the same God who meets you there, with provision, with mercy, with a deeper revelation of who He is. So today, whatever God is asking you to trust Him with, don't hold back. Climb the mountain, build the altar, lay it down, and wait. Because the God who tested Abraham's trust is still the God who provides at just the right moment, not a second too late, not a moment too early, but right on time, right at the altar of surrender. And in that moment, you'll know He was always there, and He always will be. This is the story of when God tested Abraham's trust, and through that test revealed a truth that echoes across time, that trust in God is never wasted, and obedience always leads to revelation. Thank you for listening, and maybe that's the lesson for us all, that the highest form of faith isn't found in answers, it's found in surrender. Not in knowing every detail of what God will do, but in knowing that whatever he does, it will be good, because he is good. Sometimes we confuse God's silence with his absence, but on Mount Moriah, we learn that even when God is silent, he is watching, he is working, and he will speak at the right time. Imagine Abraham walking down that mountain with Isaac, the ram sacrificed, the fire still warm, the knife returned to its sheath, but something inside him forever changed. He had seen God in a new way. The test had expanded his capacity to trust. And so it is with us. Every test of trust deepens our walk with God. Every surrender stretches our faith. And every mountaintop of sacrifice prepares us for a deeper encounter with his presence. Trust doesn't grow in certainty, it grows in mystery, in the space between the promise and the provision, in the climb, in the quiet, in the moment when the knife is raised and heaven holds its breath. So wherever you are on your journey, whether you're just starting out in the middle of your climb or standing before an altar, remember this: God sees you. He knows, he provides. He's not just the God of beginnings, he's the God of fulfillment. He doesn't just call us, he completes what he starts. And the trust you offer him today will become the testimony you carry tomorrow. That's the legacy of Abraham, and it can be yours too. Keep walking, keep trusting, because the same God who tested Abraham's trust is still writing stories of faith today, and your story is one of them.